Today I'm joined by Jamie Salé. Jamie is Olympic champion 2002. Further achievements, if Olympic champion is not enough. World champion 2001. Skate, Canada Hall of Famer, Canadian Olympic Hall of Famer. Many more things. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to meet you.
Jamie, can you explain to us in a few words what your sport is about? That is number one. And number two, you were a good individual skater, but you were an excellent pair skater. What would be the difference between the two?
Well, so in figure skating, you start out very general and you are really just learning to skate. And I know that around the world, that's the typical program that you go through, and everybody starts out as a single skater. And as you get older, for me personally, what I was watching TV and I loved figure skating, and I really was attracted to watching the pair skaters. We call them pair skaters, but people might see them as doubles. And I thought it looked really fun. So by the age of 12 years old, I was inquiring about doing this. And so that's what led me into pair skating. And it's really, really important that you're a strong single skater to be a great pair skater, because you still do individual jumps that are side by side and you spin side by side. So you need to be really strong in those elements as well. So I kept doing singles until I reached the Olympic level with my second partner, David. And that was when we had to focus on just pair skating. And that's where it took me to the world Olympic level.
Nice. What always amazed me about your sport, I mean, you guys, you have to do these amazing athletic feats, but on top of that, you have to be nice, gracefully and attractive. Yeah. How do you do that?
That's a very, very interesting observation, because for the men in our sport, especially for David anyway, my personal experience was this, that was a struggle for him, because the men in other sports, yes, it's athletic and it's powerful and everything, but he's lifting a 110-pound woman around the ice for 4.5 minutes, and he's got to have a smile on his face. And when he gets frustrated, even men typically like to, show their frustration. And so he goes, a hockey player can hit another guy on the ice, or football players, they smash into each other, whatever it is. But he goes, they can express their frustration. Whereas in figure skating, you can't show that. It's not proper. It's not part of our etiquette. There's a lot of fluffiness to figure skating. We understand that. We know that. And that was definitely something that was really challenging for David. But he learned that, it was just part of performing and impressing the judges, was to make it always look like, even when we were making mistakes, that we weren't. And that, or if we did make a mistake, it was just a mistake. It wasn't something that we did regularly. So, but yeah, it's training. It's years of training and literally practicing the way you compete. So on practices, we would always, and I know I did, I used to pretend I had an audience, and I would always be smiling, or I'd literally look up to the audience. And 7 o'clock in the morning in a cold arena, it wasn't so fun, but I visualized having people there and performing to them all the time.
Okay.
So it's just training, getting used to it.
In your life as an athlete, your darkest moment, I can imagine, because you guys kind of were victims and you changed the history of the sport. What was your darkest moment?
Darkest moment in my whole career, or with skating with David? Because I've had many dark moments. There were 3 years between my first partner and skating with David, the partner that I won the Olympics with. And those were very dark years. And I remember just really believing in my deepest gut that I really was just being patient and hoping and praying that a new partner would come along, because partners aren't easy to find, and especially really good ones. I wanted to go back to the Olympics, but I didn't want to just be an Olympian. I wanted to be on the podium. And so finding that partner that's going to get me there is not exactly an easy task. and it didn't seem to be happening. Like 1 year went by, a second year went by, and then the third year I remember being, I would call it like an athlete depression. I was messing up. I wasn't showing up on time to train. I just started really going backwards because I was feeling sorry for myself, likely, and just really sad. And there were days, as much as I said, I pulled it out of my, I call it the fire in my belly. When you really want something, I had that deep down inside, but I struggled a lot of days to find it because I just was getting frustrated that it wasn't happening. And so fortunately I didn't give up. And then I ended up, David and I saw each other at nationals, and I phoned him and said, I think we need to make this a go because we're perfectly matched. And we had already tried out previously. So we knew that things were really great between us. The chemistry was there. And so that was literally kind of a make it or break it moment for both of us. It was like, we either do this or we're both done, because we were getting older. I know that sounds terrible, but at 18 and 20 years old, we were already starting to get old.
And that was, in what year was that?
1998, we started skating together.
98, and then 4 years out of the Olympics.
4 years later, we went to Salt Lake. Yeah. 4 short years. It's not very long for a team, but we were both at the pinnacle of our sport. And it was just a matter of getting us together with the right coach and the right tools and ingredients. And we took off. I mean, the first year was a little bit of a struggle because there was injuries and whatnot, and we had to pull out of going to the World Championships. But the following year, the second year we were together, we were nailing it. Like I think we won something like 9 out of 12 competitions that we entered. And I don't know, I can't remember my stats, but it was pretty high. And so from that second year on, we were on a roll and setting ourselves up for the Olympics.
And then what did you learn from that moment?
Well, what I really learned from my dark days was not to give up. And that was proof of having a vision of where you want to be in your life, or really what you want to do and accomplish, and having many, many challenges and conditions, we call them, or circumstances that were not ideal that I had to face. And I just didn't give up, because I believed deep down, I believed in myself, and I wanted it really badly. So it's normal that people have dark days, weeks, months, or even years, as I did. But I always tell my clients, if what you're going for is really what you love, what you would love to have, then you never quit. Because that's the biggest question I get asked, is how do you know when to quit? You don't. You don't quit.
That's a good one, right? And I always think, like, if it's something you really love, it never really feels like work. So you would do it anyway. Of course, everyone has to pay his bills. I mean, that is clear. So you have to put food on the table.
Exactly.
But in a way, if it's your passion, work and hobby is the same thing, right?
Agreed. And I've always felt that way when I was training, that the hard days were hard, as you can imagine. And anybody that is even just at work, when you're struggling in your business or even in your home life, the days are challenging to get through, but you got to speak positively to yourself and know that there's going to be a breakthrough soon. Like, you just have to keep telling yourself that. So all I knew to be was positive, at least trying to be positive or see the good in those dark times when I was really struggling. And fortunately, I surrounded myself with really great people who were supportive and spoke that language to me all the time. Jamie, you're gifted, you're talented, you keep going, we believe in you, you can do this. Like, just constant positive affirmations, which is really helpful. And because you're going to have a lot of, like I said to you, conditions or situations that are not pretty or unideal. But you want to be around people who aren't going to believe in those conditions. They're going to believe in the power that's breathing you to get through it.
Yeah. And talking about dark moments, I mean, I actually expected you would talk about that incident at the Olympics. So in 2002, you were with the back against the wall, going into the final, and
Yes.
Everyone thought you would come out on top, but then you became second.
We were second.
And from the research I've done, there was a scandal that some of the judges kind of gave. So you talk us through it. Basically, someone gave the opponent a point in exchange for a point in a different competition for a different event, right?
Exactly. There was a bit of a trade-off. So at the Olympics in figure skating, you've got men's, ladies, singles, and then you've got ice dance, and you have pairs. And so there's 4 disciplines. And the real trade-off was that on the pairs judging panel, out of the 9 judges, there was a French judge, but not a Russian judge. And in ice dance, there was a Russian judge, but not a French judge. And the French ice dance team was the team that was supposed to win. That's what they wanted. And they wanted the Russians to win in the pairs event. So they didn't have they didn't have their own judges, but they had the opposite, right? The French and the Russians. So they swapped. I'll vote for your team if you vote for mine. And on top of that, in the pairs event, they somehow rallied 4 other countries to be on their side. So it was really a bizarre event. We were always warned that weird things or interesting things happen at the Olympics, like in all events. Like somebody who's supposed to win could totally, completely choke and end up, 20th when they're normally winning everything. And in figure skating, we've seen a skater be 7th in the short program, win the long program, and win the whole thing overall. Like it's happened. It's bizarre, but it happens. So when I was told that interesting things happen at the Olympics, and then I went through that experience of this scandal, which we found out as soon as we were skating around with our medals and our flowers in our hands, the word was out. Everyone was talking that there was a judging scandal. I just thought to myself, wow, like what an understatement that weird things can happen. So from that day on, the next 6 days was an absolute media frenzy. And we were on TV and on the cover of magazines, and everybody was just talking about it all the time. And it really took over the Olympics. It was the story of that Olympics for the first 6-7 days, I guess, total. And so what happened was the head of the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, said to the ISU, which is the International Skating Union, you need to fix your sport and make this right because it's taking over the Olympics. So the ISU gave us a gold medal to basically make everyone quiet. And so we share a medal with the Russians. They don't take their medal away because as a skating team themselves, they were not the ones that were in the scandal. So we just share a gold medal with the Russians.
Yeah, that was the question I had. Why 2 gold medals instead of just putting one team on top?
So at the Olympics, or pretty much in sport in general, unless the athlete themselves has been found to cheat, then they're stripped of their medals. But in this circumstance, that wasn't the case. It was a judging situation, and the skaters were the victims of it. So that's why they were allowed to keep their medal, and they just decided to give us a second gold. So we actually had to return our silver medal, which was kind of bizarre because we got somehow attached to those things. We had it for the first 6 days, and then they said, we need you to give it back. And we're like, well, who are you giving them to? It literally has our name on them. So in a press conference during those 6 days, they wanted us to speak always, and the Russians would never come. So we would go and we'd sit and we'd try to be funny and make light of it. And David, I remember saying, well, all we need now is, when they told us we were getting a gold medal, they said, all we need now is a bronze and we'll have a set. But then they took our silver away. So we have a gold medal. But I have a better story for you that I want to share with your people, because this is very cool as a Canadian. During those 6 days, there was a group from Western Canada, Calgary, Alberta, to be exact. They decided that it wasn't okay that David and I had a silver, and they were unaware that we were going to be given one by the ISU. So they collected gold jewelry from across Canada. And so when David and I got home and we had a homecoming skating show, they presented these solid gold medals to David and I with our, like, basically our picture is on the front, it's in gold. It's a picture from our long program, love story. And then on the back is an English and French saying about us as Canadian athletes. Like, it was just so incredibly moving and touching for us that our country was supporting in that like capacity, because I've never seen that before. So we got these Olympic medals, which were great, but we came home and our country gave us these incredible gold medals that were made by the citizens of Canada.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Isn't that special?
That is really cool, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What was your best moment?
My best moment at the Olympics? Okay, so here's the medal that Canada made.
Oh, cool.
So there's the front with us.
Nice.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And then there's the back with the saying of, it says, a medal can never relay the spirit of Canadians or how much you deserve their support. You're an inspiration and a source of pride. You have displayed the best of the Canadian spirit.
That's really cool.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I would say we've had quite a few great moments in our career. We had the World Championships that we won were on home soil in Vancouver. So that was really exciting for us to step onto the ice and have the whole arena erupt for us because they were Canadians and cheering for us. So that was really a really neat experience. It's not often an athlete performs or competes in their home country. Not for us anyway, on a world stage. So that was really, really cool moment for both of us. And then I would say our actual long program skate was just so, because of the pressure that you're at or feeling, and to be able to execute and deliver the perfect program at that moment on that day is really hard. And so I think when I was skating my program, I just remember thinking, wow, I've worked all these years on not just physically being perfect on the ice, but mentally, and telling myself that when I get to that last skate of my life or my career, that I just press or autopilot, like you literally go on autopilot and just execute. And that's exactly what I did. So I found that very profound, that I worked so many years psychologically to get that, and I did it. So not only did I technically perform well, but I mentally executed, which was really amazing, because it's so easy to get distracted at the Olympics when you've got other competitors or you've got coaches staring at you. There's a lot of I don't want to say psyching out, but there was a lot of opportunity for other people to sort of upset people, like competitors. And so you got to learn to stay focused and really just tunnel vision of where you're going and what you're about to do. So that was, David and I did that really well that day. So I'm proud of that.
Really cool. And you said, you said it was your last skate. Did you know you were going to retire after the Olympics?
Well, we figured that we were likely going to. Again, we weren't old, but we were getting older, and I was 24 and David was 26, and we knew that winning or coming away, especially after we got our gold medal there, and the story was so big, we figured that we're probably best to retire, turn professional, on a high. And we've won a World Championships. Now we have an Olympic gold medal. Those are two really great, attributes and rewards to be able to have a great professional career. And my goal always was to turn professional on a high and not end up declining. So we both felt that it was the right time. And then we had a great 10 years as professionals.
Mm. And as professional, you cannot participate in the Olympic Games. Is that correct?
Well, it's different today. Before, when you were professional, no, you didn't. And then in 1994, they allowed the professionals to come back and compete. But now today you're allowed to tour. They call it touring with Stars on Ice. And there's tours in Europe as well. You're allowed to do these tours and still compete if you can make it happen. So it keeps changing, but so it's really doesn't feel like there's much of a difference between a professional skater and an amateur skater anymore, because as an amateur, you can tour and make money, which before that wasn't a thing. You could not do that. Once you were touring, you were considered a professional, but now you can do both.
Yeah. I think Katarina Witt did the same, right? After the 88 Olympics, she turned professional and then she
came back in 94.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is one thing I never understood. I heard it in an interview. She said she came back in 94, but the sport has changed so much that she was not competitive anymore. Is the Olympic skating much more difficult than the professional skating?
Oh, 100%. Okay. So the difference between amateur and professional is the technical side of it. When you turn professional, you're a performer now. So in the touring, and she was touring in North America as well. So she got to skate with Scott Hamilton, Kurt Browning, Christy Yamaguchi, all these incredible icons. And she experienced the professional side is much more about performing, not so technical. People in the audience, they love seeing you do tricks, but especially in pairs and whatever, and backflips for the single skaters. But it's really about performing, and the kind of programs that you do are significantly different than when you're competing. And when you're an amateur, it's all about the jumps and the spins and your footwork and all these technical things in your program. Those are not important as professionals. It's a different type of program. I mean, you can do anything as a pro, but you definitely don't need to be doing all the big triples as a single skater. Whereas when she went to the Olympics, she was competing against these girls who were doing all of the triples that exist. And she was still, I believe, doing what she had done when she had won the Olympics. And so these girls had surpassed her and were doing harder triples, I think. So that's hard. But they were all so much younger too, right? There's a thing about being younger. Yeah. But she's still one of everybody's favorites, and she's such a beautiful person and a beautiful skater, and I always enjoyed touring with her. She was such a pleasure.
Yeah. I guess I never was into figure skating, but as a German, I mean, you kind of knew her name and you kind of watched it, and I think she was just, without knowing anything, but she made it look so effortless. And
and she was strong and confident, and I think that's what I really liked about her skating too. And yeah, I mean, she wasn't bad to look at either.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could travel back in time 10, 15, 20 years, what advice would you give a younger Jamie?
That's interesting. I always had a lot of positive feedback and encouragement, but what I really struggled with as a younger Jamie was I was bullied in school for my haircut, for the clothes that I wore, for anything. If I would go to a skating competition and my town had an article in the paper, the teachers would put it up and there'd be tacks. People would stick things in my eyes or like scratch me out or whatever. And I was bullied a lot. And so I really struggled with that. I remember going home probably 2 days a week at least, crying from school and really feeling like I don't want to go back. And I would hide at lunchtime in the bathroom or in the library because I never wanted to go outside. What are they going to say to me now? And so if I could say something to my younger self, it would just be that, you know, when hurt people. And the reason why they're doing this, they're saying these things to you because they're hurting. It's not about you. It's about them. And just given that younger Jamie strength, knowing that, but you don't think like that when you're 15, you know, and you don't think like, oh, okay, I'll just let that go because these people are struggling. You know, you feel horrible inside and you're scared. So I would have supported my younger self a little bit better in that, and I would have just got myself through it probably a little easier.
Do you think that also made you stronger?
100%. So that's where the tricky, when that people ask me that question, I also say, but I have no regrets, because everything that I've been through was character building, and it's made me the person I am today. But I tell you what, it was awful. Like, there were days, talk about darkness. Like, it was really hard for me. But I felt like what I was gifted and very fortunate to have was an outlet to express myself and feel like I was free and not judged, which is funny because figure skating is a judged sport. But when I would get on the ice every day to practice, nobody was making fun of me out there. And I could express myself to music, and I had fun out there. I felt incredibly free, and I loved it. So that was my outlet, where a lot of kids today don't have that outlet. You know, they come home and then they're bullied on social media, and then they got to go to school again the next day. See, we didn't have any of that stuff when I was growing up, thankfully. And, but again, just being really grateful that I had an outlet to be able to escape from the sadness of being bullied.
Yeah. What are the habits that make you a successful athlete or person?
Habits, I like that. For me, it's really about deciding for what you want, because once you make a decision and you start taking action, so it doesn't matter if it was, you know, for me, it was my first Olympics. And then after that, it was, I want to go to the Olympics and be on the podium. And now in this time of my life, it's about my coaching. But I make a decision and then I start taking action. So I feel like being consistent in always taking action, always moving forward, even if you're being set back a bit and you're facing a challenge, it's always asking yourself, what can I do today with where I'm at, with what I've got? Passion is another one. I'm very passionate. And for me, one of the biggest habits that I've created for myself is really just that constant positive feedback or affirmations every single day. Because it's easy to have fear come into our head and talk to us and tell us we can't do it because, and give us all kinds of reasons why we shouldn't. But I keep telling myself, if that's where I'm going, I'm doing it anyway. I'm going to overcome fear. I'm going to overcome these crappy thoughts that I'm having. And so that's a really good habit to get into, is just staying positive with yourself and using that language.
Cool. I read on your website, you are a fellow dreamer. What does it mean to be a dreamer for you?
Fellow dreamer. Since I was a little girl, I was always saying that I was going places and I was going to be on the podium at the Olympics one day, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And my mom and my family and my coaches, they all used to say to me, oh, keep dreaming, Jamie. And I'm like, okay. And so for me, dreaming never ends. And maybe dreaming is a fluffy word for a lot of people, but let's call it a destination, right? Having a vision. Where do you want to be? How do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 to 10 years from now? What would you absolutely love in your life? And so I'm still dreaming. I'm still visioning of where I see myself for the next, 20 years even of my life. And then that'll be a different phase. But doesn't matter how old you are, having goals and a dream should never end.
Do you have a morning routine?
Yes, I have 2 children. So we are up every morning, at least by 7 a.m. And we make breakfast together and we make their lunches together. And I would say that's like our Monday to Friday routine. And then weekends, we are busy with activities. So my children are both athletes. And my son's in hockey, big sport here in Canada. Right? Most boys here play hockey. And then our daughter is in... He
has a good mentor in the family.
Yes, he does. Yes. My husband won 2 Stanley Cups in the NHL, so he knows what he's talking about. And his dad was my partner and is now coaching the Edmonton Oilers in their power skating. So he's very connected as well with the elite hockey players here in Canada. Yeah. And so Jesse, our son, is in good hands with his coaching for sure. And our daughter is into gymnastics and skating a little bit, but mostly she's a performer. So we're thinking musical theater, acting, somewhere around there. So for us, it was really about putting the kids in a bunch of different sports or activities, getting them to feel out what they like, and then they make a decision at a certain age what they really want to do. But morning routine, it's the kids. Pretty basic, but what everybody does, right? And then usually when I'm healthy I'm just post-surgery right now, so I'm not able to do very much for a workout, but I usually go for a workout in the morning, whether it's something super physical or I go do yoga. And of course, I'm a coach during the day, and meditation is a big part of my day as well. It's really important at least once a day to be calm and still. And so I've implemented that into my daily routine.
And the affirmations you mentioned earlier, when do you put them into the...
Well, you know what? It's more, I'm a very positive person by nature. So for me, it's more when I'm being challenged with something, if something maybe hasn't worked out the way I thought it would, or I've got a big speech coming up and all of a sudden I'll have all this talk in my head going, oh, Jamie, you know what? You should cancel it. You're not ready for that, or you're not good enough, or you don't know what you're talking about. Like I'll have all these thoughts, and they're fear-based thoughts, right? I used to call it the devil sitting on my shoulder talking to me. So now what I do when I'm hearing those things is I literally say out loud, I'm doing it anyway. I'm doing this anyway. I don't care if you think I'm not ready. I'm going to do it anyway. Because that's how it was when I was skating. When I was afraid to compete because maybe I wasn't perfectly ready for a certain competition, I said, I'm doing it anyway. You have to, you go, right? So now it's so easy to, bail out of a speech. If you're being asked to talk at something, you can say, I don't know, whatever reasoning, but you can actually cancel things like that. And or even just say no, because you're afraid that you're not going to be good at it. Now I'm saying yes, and I'm doing them. Just do it. So, and you get better at it, right? Just like you're interviewing. I'm sure when you first started, you were scared to death of your first interview and you weren't sure how you're going to do it, but you just did it. And now you've gotten better and better and better at it, and you're comfortable.
More or less.
Yeah.
No, I am. That's okay. Yeah. No. But yeah, it's like everything, right? I mean, you know better than me. I mean, it's practice. And then.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
How do you prepare for important moments?
Well, again, the same thing. So it's all in, for me, it was all as a skater. It was putting in not just time. So it's not quantity, it was quality. Our coaches were really focused on, you don't just step on the ice and skate around uselessly for an hour. It was all about what's your plan. So we always had a plan every single session, and we executed that plan. If we had extra time, then we would do whatever we wanted. But the key is to always have a plan of exactly what you're going to do, even just for the day. Have your schedule. And for me also, it's repetition. And they always say, practice makes perfect. And my one trainer said to me, Jamie, perfect practice makes perfect. Because if you're practicing and you're making the same mistakes all the time, you're never going to be perfect, right? I know the saying is really talking about the more you practice, the more you get there. But when you eventually can learn to practice perfect, that's when you execute perfectly, because your mind now believes you can do it. And then your body, like I said to you earlier, you go into autopilot and your muscle memory knows what to do when you have to do it. Yeah. And so it's the same for me as a coach now. When I'm doing my talks or I have a speaking engagement, I practice that talk over and over and over again. And I do it as if I have an audience in front of me. I don't just kind of walk around the house half pretending like I'm going to speak to somebody. I actually deliver it like I have an audience in front of me. Yeah. I just feel it's really helpful. It's the same way I trained as an athlete. And so far I've had great success with it.
Yeah. That's an interesting one, the practice thing, because people always say, yeah, practice, but there's also that term deliberate practice, and actually
deliberate
needs to be deliberate. Otherwise,
yes,
you can do your 10,000 hours, but
exactly.
If it's not,
that's a very good word. And deliberate meaning having that plan, like this is what I'm doing, right?
Yeah. So digging into the preparation for important moments, in that Olympic final 2002, you were with the back against the wall and you had to bring out a flawless performance in the last free skate, right? So how do you prepare for that if you know anything less than perfect is not good enough? How do you stay calm?
Not by having that kind of dialogue in my head. If I don't skate perfect, then I'm in trouble. It's, again, literally just visualizing ourselves being on the ice for that long program, skating it perfectly. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times your program will run through your head. And I mean, I've talked to so many athletes, and whether you're bobsled or you're hockey or you're speed skating, like whatever you're doing, athletes in general, most athletes that I know anyway, that are successful, have the incredible ability to see themselves executing from start to finish. And that's not easy. I know we always say visualize yourself, but it's not easy to see yourself go from A to Z at all. And so when I got to that point leading up to the Olympics, when I could do that, and I saw us standing on the podium and our flag coming down in the middle and singing "O Canada" with everybody in the arena, like I was seeing all of that. So I just kept doing that leading up to the long program. And we had a great short program. And I just knew that I was ready. But then I had a really horrible collision with the Russians on our warm-up. And it was an accident on both parts. I thought I was coming around the other end of the ice, and I thought the Russians were going to be going diagonally down the ice, but they ended up doing a different pattern. It was more of an S pattern, and we met and collided on the blue line. Well, it was such a shock because they weren't expecting it. They thought I was going somewhere else, and I thought they were going somewhere else, but boom, there we were. I was laying on the ice and holding my stomach. Fortunately, none of us got really badly hurt, but I sure felt terrible the next day. It was kind of like I'd been hit by a Mack truck because I ran into both of them as a team. And but somehow I got off the ice, and our coach just said, you know what, let's go to our own corner and stay focused. And I kept visualizing myself being okay and focusing on my breathing. And, you know, we could hear them skating because they skated before us, and we heard the crowd react to a mistake. So naturally, you're not wanting to focus on what's going on the ice because you got to focus on what you're about to do. But when you hear that, you go, oh, okay, now the door's open, right? And that's just the nature of competition. You tell yourself, okay, you know, you don't wish badly for anybody. May the best man win, right? But when we heard that audience react, we're like, oh, okay, the door's open now. So we just need to execute the best we can. And because the Russians are hard to beat, they're so good. And they almost always skated flawlessly. So they were a tough team to beat.
No, I believe that. I've seen an interview, and I thought that was really interesting. You guys adopted a no stone unturned approach where you looked at all the elements to maximize performance. And you even went so far to take people out of your life, acquaintances who were negative or something like that, right?
Yeah, it sounds a little bit more dramatic than it was, but it's interesting that we were doing it when we were skating, and it's, as a coach now too, I talk to my clients about the importance of surrounding yourself with really positive people. And we knew back when we were competing, the year before the Olympics was a crucial year for us in our training. But like I said to you, it's not just the physical part of the training that matters. It's the mental side too, and the emotional side of it. And when you are around people who are, let's say they're gossipy, people who like to talk about people, and or people that always are tearing people down. And we've all been around people like this, whether it's at a lunch or a dinner or a family gathering, whatever, right? And it's heavy. You leave those gatherings feeling really heavy. And we were told that all those moments matter. And so we knew who in our life that you really can't erase was like that. So we avoided hanging around with them because, and it was family. You know, you don't choose where you're born, right? So we just avoided that as much as we could, if not always. And it really makes a difference because training is hard enough, right? But if you're always around things that are distracting you or adding to that negativity and sort of pulling you down, it's so much work to get yourself back up to the positive again. So it's really important. And I think just in general for people, why do you want to hang around people who like to talk about people? We say those are small minds, right?
Yeah.
Great minds talk about opportunity and possibilities. So, yeah.
I've also heard the term energy givers and energy suckers, and I think it makes a lot of, once you experience it, it does make a lot of sense.
It 100% does. And that's exactly what would happen is you would be around somebody who would just take all your energy, and then you felt like it's amazing how it affects your physiology, because your thinking creates your feelings create your actions, and then your actions create your results, right? So if you're around these people and you're thinking, we call it stinking thinking, you start to feel bad. And then your body might even feel tired. Like the next day, people feel really exhausted. And I'm like, yeah, because you took up all your mental energy around toxicity, right? So it's better to be at home by yourself and be quiet and watch positive, happy things, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you overcome setbacks?
Well, the biggest thing that I've always done since I'm a little girl, and I learned this was a learned reaction, I guess, is to always look at what I've failed at or the setback and ask myself, what did you just learn? What can I do better? And I see a setback as feedback. I always have. It was like, it doesn't mean I'm bad at this. It doesn't mean I should quit. This is just feedback. So you ask yourself, what can I do better? What did I learn from that experience? And in figure skating, it was often, well, maybe I wasn't as focused as I need to be, or maybe now I've really realized I need to work on the mental side. And I didn't think it was important before, but I do now. Because at that competition, I couldn't see myself skating perfectly. Whatever it was, I always asked myself, what am I going to do now to be better? And so that's what I always tell athletes today, people, my clients, is that, you're not a failure if you choose to see the opportunity or potential to come out of that experience as a positive one. But you're a failure if you choose to stay down and quit, right? That's a failure. Otherwise, you just see it as feedback. It's just feedback. What can you do with it?
And I saw you started working with a psychologist at some point in your career, and you said that was a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that?
Well, so the biggest psychologist awareness for me was when we were in Nice, France at the World Championships, and the Russians had just been taken out of the competition. I guess they had tested positive previously at a competition, so they were no longer competing there. So we were like, now the door is wide open. So we were skating really well, and we thought, well, we've got this. And we were sitting, I think, in a decent spot second after the short, and I completely messed up the whole long program. I don't even know what happened to me. And I remember leaving Nice feeling like such a victim. I played that victim state, poor me, and I don't know what happened to me. And I sat in that mental state for so long. Like, I feel like we toured Germany for a solid month, and all I did was mope around because I didn't understand what was wrong with me. So when I got back from Germany, I decided that I wanted to get help because I didn't like the way I was thinking. It was really interruptive for me. It was like, it was alien for me. I didn't like the way I was feeling because that's not how I normally feel and think. So the only thing I knew was to call for help, psychologist. And so that psychologist said to me right away, he said, your mental game is not tough. It's not strong enough. And, when you got out there, I guarantee you, you thought the door was wide open, but mentally you weren't prepared for that competition. And I remember thinking, again, here's the feedback from the setback, is he's right. Because at that point, I couldn't visualize myself and David skating perfectly. And I'm grateful that I had that happen in Nice, because the following year was Worlds in Vancouver. And then the following year was the Olympics. So if I hadn't learned from that experience that I wasn't mentally ready, I wouldn't have been mentally ready even for the Olympics 2 years later. that could have happened to me maybe in Salt Lake City. So I'm grateful that it happened when it did. And I took, the feedback that I needed to, and that was, Jamie, you got to work on your mental game, because when you perform, it's 90% mental, 10% physical. So
that is an interesting one. I would challenge that a little bit, because I think it's a both way. So the mental affects the physical, but also the physical affects the mental.
Totally.
If you know that you're physically prepared, that also helps your mental game. So,
yeah. But physical preparation, like by the time we get to the Olympics, your body and your, like, physically, David and I could do everything every day perfectly. So now it was mental, of just sustaining that mindset of, we are ready, we can do this, we will do this, and just seeing it, right? So, because physically we were in the best shape of our lives. So it was just a mental game at that point. And trust me, to be totally honest with you, there were quite a few people that tried to throw us off the day of the long program. Like, they came in our space, they tried to, be where we are and interfere with, like, our psyche. And we had all kinds of things that people tried to throw us off. But again, my partner thinks it's funny because he knew what they were doing. But I remember thinking, oh, wow, isn't this nice? Everybody's being friendly and we're all hanging out together. Like, it's not a normal thing for all of us in skating. Everybody warms up in their own spot, but our competitors decided to come over into our space. And I remember thinking, oh, that's really nice. Like, we're all friends and we're being nice to each other. They were there for a reason. But because I had that mindset, it didn't affect me. So whether I was just ignorant or wanting to see it that way, I don't know. It worked.
It has worked.
Mm-hmm.
Who's your role model and why?
Wow. Oh, gosh. I've had so many role models in my life. One of the biggest ones, obviously, that was really instrumental through a lot of my life, or all my life, is my mom. She suffered depression when I was a younger child, and I admire her for not giving up. She just kept going for me, keeping me in skating, and just knowing that I was happy doing what I was doing. And she always was really positive and inspiring for me, even though she was struggling. So to me, she is, a person that, I saw her struggle, but I also saw my mom not quit. Right. So that's a great role model for me, and staying positive for her daughter, right, which was a massive struggle. I personally have never had real depression. I've had dark days, but I wouldn't diagnose me with depression, and I can't imagine what she was feeling most days, especially having she had 2 children, but dealing with my skating and the costs of that, and scheduling and whatnot. And then, of course, I even had a trainer that I worked with, an off-ice conditioning coach, who was a big part of me not quitting on my dark times. And he was very inspiring and very motivating. And again, just with the talks that we would have, sometimes sitting after training, and he would just talk to me, and he was kind of like a big brother to me. So I'm super grateful for him, because I know he's one of the people that saved me from quitting. Role models. I also, there's a lot of athletes over the years that I've really admired. And I know their stories of what they've been through, and even just some Canadian athletes that, like, we had one, I remember in the Vancouver Olympics, Joanie Rochette's mom had passed away like days before she competed. And I remember just thinking, I can't imagine having that happen and having to go out and skate. Like, how do you do that? So she became, in that moment, a role model for me too. Just that sheer determination and passion and true grit, whatever you want to call it, to just, my mom would want me to do this. And so actually talking about it, it's a very emotional thing, because can't imagine losing a parent, right, in your most important days of your career. So That's a tough one for me to nail down for you, but I would say my mom and my conditioning coach for sure.
Cool. What's the best advice you received and who gave it to you?
Again, that's a bit of a loaded question because I've had many people who have said really powerful things to me. There was a gentleman, a dad of another skater that I grew up here in Edmonton with, who was there for me when I was skating in Oakland, California one summer. And I would say that he really turned things around for me as far as visioning and having a focus when I was struggling in my 3 years of my dark days. And we had many talks, and he said to me, Jamie, you need a vision. And he said, and I want you to write it down. And so that summer, I would say, was the biggest turnaround of my whole career, because as soon as I got my plan in my head on paper, or my idea or my dream on paper, it became a plan. And from that day forward, I kept having goals, and I kept striving for more and better. And so for me, along with my mom, of course, and my conditioning coach that was always really positive, I would say that man was the one that really got me turned around, because I was kind of just drifting. I was putting in time and just praying that things were going to work out, that a partner would show up for me. And so when he helped me understand that you need a vision, that's when things did turn around for me.
Interesting. I just trying to recall that there's a quote which basically describes what you just said. I think it's something like, it's a dream until you write it down, and when you write it down, it's a goal. So,
yeah.
I'm misquoting it, but
it becomes a plan.
Yeah, something like that.
Because we need a roadmap, right? And it's funny, like, and of course now the language that I'm using in my coaching is really to my clients is that you need that blueprint. We call it a blueprint. The same thing when you're building a house or a condo or apartment, whatever. You have to have, the builder needs a blueprint of what your dream is of your home. And the same is for your actual vision of where you want to be in your life. And you don't have to always know exactly what you want, but for me, even now as a coach, all I could write down 2 years ago in my vision was help people. I really love helping people, and I didn't even know what that looked like. I work with Special Olympic athletes and people with intellectual disabilities, and I love being around them. So that's really all I knew about helping, but I'm going, well, that's not really going to be a job for me, but it's more of a hobby, things that I really enjoyed it to do, but help people. And 2 weeks later, I was at a vision workshop, and I person presenting, and I said, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a speaker on a stage, helping people transform their lives, and from whatever state that they're in to success, and helping them understand the tools and share my personal experiences with people. And yeah, it was 2 weeks later, I was like, a light bulb came on. I went, that's exactly what I want to do.
Oh, cool. The next one really interests me. A typical training day for a figure skater. How does it look like?
Well, again, for us, it was quality, not quantity. So more wasn't better. And you'll be actually quite surprised if I gave you our schedule when David and I were training for the Olympics. It was minimal. We did 2 pair sessions a day, and by the end, we weren't really doing an individual free skate to work on our jumps and stuff, because we utilized our time properly on our pair sessions. So we only skated about 2 hours a day, and then we would do some kind of off ice every day between half an hour and 1 hour. So maybe 3 hours a day, and the rest was spent at home. I would go and watch videos at home of our performances, and I did a lot of mental stuff, but it was 3 hours of physical work a day, max.
And that was in preparation for the Olympics?
For the Olympics, correct.
And in the off season, I would assume volumes are a bit higher?
It depends on the athlete. Again, when David and I were first skating together, we were skating 4 hours a day. When we were living in Montreal, we were doing 4 sessions a day. And then the year leading up to the Olympics, we really tightened that up and decided that, it wasn't really about the important thing wasn't doing more. It was about doing better quality time. And we just found that the 2-pair sessions were all that we needed. And it was also to that conserve that energy too, right? Like, it's really important you put yourself all out there on each session, and going out for a third session, unless you're really having a struggle with something, then you can go on for a third session to work on it or whatever. But we weren't having that issue. So, and even if we did, our coach always said to us, you've put in your time, go do your off ice, but you're done for the day. Let's erase what's happened, and that maybe it wasn't a great day or something, but let's erase it, and tomorrow's a fresh day. And that was our mentality, was just that, don't hold on to that, let it go, and tomorrow's a new day. But generally we were doing really well. Like, we were just ready. So it was about, consistency and just training smart.
And as a strength and conditioning coach, I would always think, like, in a sport like you guys, you jump and you land. There are so many impact forces also on the body. Is that something that you take into consideration in the weekly planning? So kind of, one day more jumping, the next day probably less impact or something like that?
Well, and for pair skating, we're jumping less than the single skaters, but our trainer knew exactly, like, she used to watch us skate, so she knew exactly what we were doing. And she would create the appropriate program for where we were at, meaning summer would be different. Like you're saying, I'm assuming it would be more training. We would do heavier weight training maybe in the summer leading up to the fall, right? And then, or even just our load was heavier. Then once we started competing, she would taper that off, and we would do less time, but like really specific agility exercises or really specific plyometric things to work on. One day a week, it was maybe power, right? The exploding part of, the movement that we had to do. And so she was really good. It's like a scientist having to figure all that out. I don't know how she did it, but like we were like bang on. I think there was maybe 2 sessions where, for the whole year, where we sat with her and we were like, we're wiped. We can't, like, we are physically and mentally done today. I remember one time I was crying, and David was just like, and we're just like, we're so mentally exhausted from the pressure. And then she would just sit and talk with us. And so those days also matter, right? Having that sort of therapist, someone who's supporting you and going, it's okay, you guys. And you know what? This is what it's all about. This is what it's like for an Olympic athlete to train. It's your days aren't all going to be fun and easy or enjoyable. And yeah, so we would just take it easy on those days, but everything was planned. Everything from the minute we left for the Olympics. I'm not kidding you. Like our weekly schedule was all planned out.
Do you want to nominate someone to be interviewed?
With you?
Yes.
Do I want to nominate someone? I don't know. Who are you interested in? Are you? Would you like to? Yeah. Okay. I would. For sure, I would nominate Kat. Kurt Browning. He's an interesting character. Fellow Canadian. Scott Hamilton would be another one. I don't know. I could give you a list of all kinds of athletes.
Really cool. What's going on in your life right now? I've been to your Facebook page and I binge watch all the videos. Actually, it's really cool. I would recommend everyone to watch that. It's short, but loaded with wisdom or actionable advice, not wisdom. That's actionable advice.
Well, yeah. So what I've decided to do was, use my experiences that I've been through in my life to share with individual people that want to work with me. And I don't like the word life coach because here in Canada anyway, everybody, it's a very common used term, I guess, for people that are helping people. I like the word motivational coach or the title motivational coach, because I feel instead of selling people to want to work with me, it's about motivating people, right? Getting them inspired to say, like, that would be so cool to work with Jamie to understand, the tools that she used for success, because not only have I had that in skating, but I've also been certified to be a life coach. So I'm helping people discover a life that they would love living, because the people that are generally reaching out to me have experienced a lot in their life, but they feel now, like I have felt in my life, that they're just drifting around and they want to know what their greater purpose is, or they're struggling with a certain part of their life, area of their life, and they want support in that. And what I feel my services are, why they're different than maybe a psychologist, because I've had lots of psychologists in my life, is that we don't necessarily sit and listen and talk about our problems. Like, I don't have space for that in my sessions. It's more about, we always talk about possibilities and opportunities. I say to my clients, I know you have conditions. I do too. I still do. I always will. Something will always show up, whether it's physical, it's mental, it's emotional, whatever. Maybe it's even that talk in our head, right? That shows up too. But my job is to keep them accountable, to say, I know you have this condition that's bothering you. It's there, but don't let it get you. And so I give them the tools to work through their conditions so that they can also achieve their goals and their dreams. It's so much fun. I love it.
Like that. Yeah. I think there's also, I live by a bunch of quotes. I think there's also a quote
Me too.
like, energy flows where attention goes. So if you are kind of always,
that's on my website.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I love that one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is true.
We used to say mind goes, the body goes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, where the mind goes, the body flows. Like wherever you place your attention, right? So you're letting the universe know. Yeah. When you get definite with the universe gets definite with you. And so that's why I tell everybody, when you're writing your vision, dream big. Like, why not? We always sit in the thought of, well, I can't have that. That's not possible. That's not realistic. I don't know. Are you a realist? Or do you tell yourself that certain things aren't realistic?
I am a realist, but I also believe in doing the things I want to do. And I think that's what has guided me throughout my career. Again, it's not about me here, it's about you. But a lot of people told me I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now.
But you proved them wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I do it for myself, so it's not that I do it for someone else.
But that's the key, is to always be thinking like that, you know, talking the way we are talking right now, or talking on cell phones, internet, airplanes, you light. Thomas Edison created light, and everybody thought he was mentally insane when he was, working on creating light, and he had 10,000, he calls them 10,000 failures. All that stuff wasn't realistic before it was created and actually reality, right? So when people say, oh, I can't have that because, or, the economy, or my family won't think, or I don't think I can have that, I say, go back to being a kid. When you were a kid, anything was possible. We had big dreams when we were kids. We used to role play all the time, right? Yeah. So if you can, as an adult now, we stop allowing ourselves to fall down. And so we become these realists, and we put ourselves in these bubbles so that we don't fail at things. I can't do that because what if I fail at it? Right? But you're here on this earth. Why not try? Why not go for it? I'd rather fail at something. I'd rather do it and fail at it than say I can't and not try. So that's what I do with my clients, is getting them thinking bigger and stop having those boundaries. Like, I can only do this because. Think outside that. And even if it's not about, and the most important thing here, Christian, is not necessarily focusing on that, like that vision that you've got for yourself isn't the important thing, isn't actually accomplishing it. It's the person you become on the journey, the lessons that you learn that are forever, that you'll apply to every next chapter. And because there's a lot of things that people will put in their visions that are really, really out there. And that's wonderful. But again, being an Olympic gold medalist, there's only one champion every 4 years. Didn't mean I couldn't do it, but if I didn't accomplish that, it doesn't make me a failure. It was the person I've become in that journey is the gift.
Really cool. So where can people find you? So the Gold Medal Vision, I've seen that on Facebook and I link that up. Where else can people find you?
I have a website. It's just jamiesalé.com. So, and actually my website is being revamped right now. I'm rebranding. So that is going to change a little bit, but of course that's my landing page. And then I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and Instagram is Jamie Salé Life Coach. And on Facebook, it's just Jamie Salé, I believe. I'm also on Twitter as Jamie Salé. So yeah, and LinkedIn. I mean, there's so many outlets, aren't there today? It's crazy.
It is.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I will bring them all together on my website and then people can find you wherever they want to find you.
Yeah, exactly.
Jamie, that was awesome. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you, Christian. It was a pleasure speaking with you. I wish you all the very best in your future endeavors.